Next on the agenda, number 4, is an update regarding the Thomas Street redevelopment, DNR WAM grant, and potential transfer to Wausau Community Development Authority. Director Brodick.
Yes, thank you. So I included this item on the agenda and the memo in the packet, which is as robust as it is, because we've had some confusion about the timeline of events and the procedure. So I laid out everything as it happened. As we move through the development process, I also wanted to tee up the conversation about transferring the properties to the CDA because they're an eligible entity for the Ready for Reuse grant, which is a remediation grant that comes after the WAM grant that assists in cleanup. So we're not asking for that today. That request would come before this committee after the phase 1 is signed. We do have Gina Larson, who is the WAM grant administrator, on the line today. So if we have any questions specifically for her, she was gracious enough to join or to offer her time at the very last minute. And just as an update for the committee, as of today, we still do not have a signed contract for the phase 1 testing. So we are still kind of in a holding pattern. There's really nothing that the city can do to speed that up. And it'll kind of take its course. So there is really, there's nothing that it doesn't make sense for us to do anything at this point other than let the testing play out as it will. And I think that the memo was kind of speaks for itself, but I will of course take questions, and Gina is available for any WAM specific or DNR specific grant questions as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I haven't generally spoken at any great length regarding most issues, but my concerns regarding the matters with which we're dealing are serious, and I feel that as a representative of the residents of the city, I have to express those serious concerns this evening. And I appreciate the update on the Thomas Street parcels, and I'm extremely pleased that my communications were included in the packet. I do have concerns about some of these things. First of all, it's my opinion that this entire process was in direct conflict with the March 12th directive of the City Council. Whoever encouraged and carried out the inappropriate RFPs without the Thomas Street parcels was, to my knowledge, doing so without proper authority and acted blatantly against council directives. Then it appears to me that Ms. Brodick laid out in the packet merely that I chose not to meet with her. However, it was my feeling that it was inappropriate to meet with her in discussions or meetings that further undermined the directives of the council. This request for a meeting with me felt like an excuse for releasing the inappropriate RFP and for not following the direction of the mayor when he asked to correct the RFP. Instead, a second RFP was issued without the Thomas Street parcels. I did discuss the request for a meeting with Mayor Denny, and he indicated that I should hold off on that. Regarding the requested meeting with Ms. Brodick, the mayor, and the DNR, I spoke with Mayor Denny immediately upon the request for such a meeting. He and I discussed the fact that the resolution had already been passed and formally approved by the City Council prior to my time, and that further meetings and actions that were already against council directives would be inappropriate. Therefore, the mayor agreed that a second meeting with the DNR was unnecessary, and he notified Ms. Brodick of such. Next, regarding Ms. Brodick's reasoning that putting out an RFP for the Thomas Street parcels may affect the WAM grant. When Mayor Denny communicated to me that that was one of the reasons for not including the Thomas Street parcels, I shortly thereafter made a phone call to Matt Thompson at the DNR and asked if an RFP for the Thomas Street parcels would negatively impact the grant. Mr. Thompson said that it should not affect the grant. Therefore, one phone call to Mr. Thompson took me 5 minutes. That issue should not have delayed putting out the RFP as directed by council, and it would not have been another reason to exclude the Thomas Street parcels. To be completely honest, as a representative of the residents of this city, I feel disgusted that this appropriate action against council directives has even taken place, but I am equally disgusted that there was no action taken to correct this mess. The Thomas Street neighborhood residents participated in days of presentations by Ms. Brodick and consultants. They felt very positive. The presentation was wonderful, and the residents felt very positive. They were choosing the affordable single-family homes for the infill lots. The only resolution to this issue is for the city to follow through with council directives, issue the appropriate RFPs, and provide what has been communicated to the residents. When anyone, and I feel anyone, can choose to go against council directives without proper authority because they have a different opinion or are in disagreement, and there are no repercussions for that action, and someone is not held accountable, it is my opinion that we are in serious trouble. Thank you.
May I respond?
Yep.
Thank you. So in the March 12th resolution, we applied logic and context to those statements that were authorized in the resolution. Logic dictates that because we didn't have a grant approval, we couldn't RFP the parcels because we didn't know what was going to happen with them. Context, as you see in the memo, also shows that the conversation and consensus was that we would RFP the parcels on Jefferson and Bridge that were ready to go. So we did that. When I talked with Gina Larson from the DNR, who administers the grant, that conversation took longer than yours with Matt Thompson at the DNR, which, by the way, if you wanted to call me and tell me about that conversation, you were happy to do, I would be more than happy to have that conversation and know what conversations you are having with the entity who is administering the city grant. So the resolution, like I said, was passed prior to the WAM grant being approved. Without knowledge of the approval and any repercussions from that grant, we did not want to move forward. I'm not sure how familiar you are with grant administration, but sometimes, depending on the grant, there are times when if you move forward on something, you can actually jeopardize the grant itself or any subsequent grants. So I really did not want to be the one jeopardizing that. We also did not want to move something forward without taking it back to a committee because we didn't have continuity in the committee. Of this committee, we have 2 members that have survived in the turn of administration. So I didn't feel that it was appropriate to take something basically from a former committee through just RFP it without coming back to another committee, especially when the alder for the district has changed over. So my requests for meetings were rooted in wanting to have a conversation and figure out what would make sense given, again, the logic of the situation, which is laid out in the timeline of the memo here. And I would love, as I have reiterated many, many times, to have a conversation with the neighborhood. I felt really good, as you did, about the trust that we were hopefully building back. And I did not include those several requests dating back to November of 2023 in the packet today, although I do have them with me, in which I was requesting assistance from many, I think it was 4 people who were involved in neighborhood meetings. So I think we've got 2 issues here. One is a procedural issue, that there's a concern that we didn't RFP the parcels when it simply didn't make sense to do so, especially if we do turn them over to the CDA, we won't even own them and be able to dictate who they will work with. And 2, and that's also a timeline issue because we don't know the timeline of the DNR grant. I should mention that the DNR grant is a testing grant. It's not a cleanup and remediation grant. So once we get the testing grant, we still have phase 1 and phase 2 to go, and then whatever contamination, if any, is found, then we need to apply for a remediation grant if there is contamination found. So that extends the timeline quite extensively, to reuse a word, I guess. But you can see from the memo too, and the dates included, that it was July 24th of 2023, that the Wisconsin Assessment Monies grant was applied for, and we didn't have a determination until March 22nd of 2024. So the grant process by itself is it has been taking a long time to get through, and it doesn't to RFP a parcel to contractors who are expected then to hold a bid for years potentially simply doesn't make sense. And this is why I was hoping to have those meetings so that we could figure out something that was that made sense to you and kept the city kind of in a good light with the small pool of contractors that we have to work with. So I think that's all I wanted to say.
May I respond?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Broderick, I appreciate and respect your extensive explanation of what happened. But you said you took the context of the council resolution. If everyone took it upon themselves to take a council resolution and say, this is what I think about it, I think our city would be in trouble. I don't think anyone has the authority to do that. So I think that was done improperly, and I don't think it should have been done. Secondly, our residents were told that this is what was going to happen. You put them through days of public input, and they were appreciative of that. It's improper for the city to make such dramatic kinds of communications with the city and saying, this is what we're going to do for you, and then turn around and not do that. So I think this whole process was inappropriate, and I hope not to see this happen again. I can't take a council directive and say, I think this is the context, and this is how I'm interpreting it, and this is what I think I'm going to do. I don't think anybody can. It's the staff's job to carry out the directives of the council, and I think we're in serious trouble if this ever happens again or if this goes uncorrected. Thank you.